God in heaven, and here am I on earth. So I'll let my words be few. Jesus, I am so in love with you. And I'll stand in awe of you. Yes, I'll stand in awe of you. My words be few. Jesus, I am so in love with you. Simplest of all love songs, I want to bring to you. So I'll let my words be few. Jesus, I am so in love with you. And I'll stand in awe of you. Yes, I'll stand in awe of you. And I let my words be few. Jesus, I am so in love with you. You're God in heaven, and here am I on earth. So I'll let my words be few. Jesus, I am so in love with you. And I'll stand in awe of you. Yes, I'll stand in awe of you. And I let my words be few. Jesus, I am so in love with you. And I'll stand in awe of you. Yes, I'll stand in awe of you. And I let my words be few. Jesus, I am so and I let my words be few. Jesus, I am so in love with you. Holy word, long preserved, for I walk in this world. They reside with God's own heart. Let the ancient words impart words of life, words of hope. Give us strength, help us cope in this world where we roam. Ancient words will guide us home. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts, let the ancient words impart. Holy word of our faith, handed down to this age, came to us through sacrifice. Oh, heed the faithful words of Christ. Holy word, long preserved, for our walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Let the ancient words impart. We have come with open hearts. Let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Let the ancient words impart. We have come with open hearts. Let the ancient words impart. Father God, we thank you today for the ancient words, God, that ring true today. That mean so much, God. We ask that your word would be spoken here today. We would learn more about you, God. Just give us your words, Father. We love you. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts, let the ancient words impart. We have come with open hearts, let the ancient words impart. Amen. You may be seated.
Right on. We are today wrapping up. I mean, it was interesting for me as a parent of school-age children that my youngest started back into school. That is a good thing for parents. You know, I was talking to someone and someone was like, yeah, they don't have school-age children, and so it just kind of messes up the whole traffic patterns and stuff. And so I apologize to you that do not. But for those of us that have school-age children, it is nice to have it back in. You know, there is a rhythm to life that we find, and it is good because that is when we note that it is the end of summer. And although we have a lot of fun stuff that happens in summertime, you know, that there's a good season as we go into fall. But today we are wrapping up our summer series. We've been talking a lot. We've been talking about a lot of different things, a lot of different people in the 23 and He series. People that are connected to Jesus. People, humanity, connected to Jesus, investing themselves in who He was and what really made Him who He was. And too often we see Jesus as just God. But Jesus was not just God. He was fully God, but He was also fully man. And there was something to be invested in that, and we can connect with that. And we've been looking at some of Jesus' ancestors and then seeing how that connects with us. And in the meantime, I've had a tremendous amount of fun listening to our staff speak a lot during the summertime, and it's been just a good blessing to hear their heart and what God has been writing in their soul as well, and that has been awesome. But today, as we wrap it up, we are going to look at Solomon. Solomon was a very prominent member of the Old Testament. He was the son of King David. We've heard of King David, and now we know of Solomon. And Solomon had a very great focus. Solomon, when he started into his role as king of Israel, that he was a focused individual. He was right on track. God was inspiring him and leading him in a good direction. This is what it says when we talk about the focus of Solomon. It says, at Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. It's almost like the genie had just appeared for Solomon. He had rubbed the lamp, and all of a sudden, there was God. I mean, he had just gone to bed just thinking, hey, I'm just going to bed, I'm just doing my thing. And there it was. Ask whatever you want. Whatever you want. Now, some of us, if we were to process that, we're like, man, I could think of a few things that I would ask. You know, I mean, my list might be fairly extensive. I could pare it down to 2 or 3 things. But if I was going to ask for one thing, what would it be? And Solomon answered, give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong, for who is able to govern this great people of yours? See, Solomon understood he was the king of Israel, but he had no business ruling God's people. There was an understanding with him. He says, God, you're in charge. And physically, I'm here in this position where they're looking to me for something, but what do I have to offer? What can I do? So he says, give me wisdom because I need to govern your people. You know, he didn't ask for all of the other stuff. He says, I just want to have your mind and your heart and your ability to lead these people. Give me that. I mean, what an interesting take. What an interesting prayer to pray when you're there faced with God saying, I will give you anything. See, Solomon's focus was clear. And because Solomon's focus was clear, God poured out blessings in Solomon's life. He just poured it out. He says, look at this. It says this, I will do what you have asked. Of course, because God's a God of his word. And he says, whatever you want, I will give you. And so he says, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. I mean, that's pretty awesome right there. He says, you are going to have the wisdom that you've asked for, and even more so than what you think. He says, moreover, I will give you I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. See, sometimes we're like, man, I just want to ask for all my needs to be met. God, would you just meet all my needs so that I can be peaceful and happy? And see, Solomon didn't ask for that. He asked for wisdom. God gave him in abundance, and then God gives him in abundance beyond that. See, God is an abundant God. And too often we see him as this one that's nickel and diming us, this one that's keeping all of his good stuff from us. But he wants to pour out his blessings to his people. But what is our focus? What is our heart? Where are we going with that? See, God pours out this blessings. He says, you're going to be wiser than anyone else that's ever been, and you are going to have more stuff than any king that has ever had before. He says, you're going to have it all. I will pour out my blessings. But here's the thing that we need to understand. Blessings for Solomon brought distraction. Many times in our life, blessings bring distraction. They confuse us. Solomon had an incredible focus on God. God, I can't do this without you. I need your wisdom. I need your guidance. I need you to lead my life, or else I'm going to fail miserably. And then all of a sudden he says, you know what? I will lead your life. I will guide your life. And I will give you all these blessings. And pretty soon when the blessings come, we're like, wow, God, I don't know that I need you anymore. See, blessings can steal our focus to become our focus rather than the one that is the blesser. It says this in 1 Kings 10, 23 to 25. King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the other kings of the earth. The whole world sought an audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. Year after year, everyone who came brought a gift, articles of silver and gold, robes and weapons and spices and horses and mules. They would just come into the kingdom of Israel and they would just offer good stuff. And they're like, can I just hang out with you, Solomon? I mean, Solomon says, yeah, let me share a little bit of the wisdom and the thoughts that I've been pondering today. And people are like, wow, I will pay to listen to what it is you have to say. And people from all over the world were doing this. We see the Queen of Sheba, and she rolls in right before this, and she pours out all this stuff, and she goes, I couldn't believe that there was this man that had this kind of wisdom, so I want to check it all out. And she says, you've gone even beyond what I thought, even beyond what people have told me, and gave all of this stuff. And all of the kings. And see, here's the interesting thing that I see in this passage is that God had put in his heart wisdom. But year after year, people came and put other stuff in him. And too often, we lose sight on what God has placed in our heart and continue to see what other people have added. What is it that guides our focus? Is it the things that God has invested in our life or the things others have? He had fame. He had money. He had attention. He had pleasures. But we see people that we think have that in our world today. And they seem awfully lost. It says this a little bit further down in 1 Kings 11, verses 1 and verse 3. King Solomon, however, as well, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, because he had connected with Egypt, connected with Pharaoh's daughter and stuff. It says that he had, I'm just reading the Bible here, people. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. Just going to leave it right there. Just going to leave it. 1,000. I can do math. I'm not that great at math, but 1,000. I mean, you can have a special date night every night and still take 3 years to cycle through. 3 years. Wow. But it all led him astray. We think we have an idea what's going to bring us pleasure, what's going to bring us value, what's going to bring us the needs that we have in our life. But we see that in the midst of this distraction, Solomon got discouraged. In the midst of the distractions that we face in life, we get discouraged. See, sometimes we're sitting there going, man, I've been going through a dark season. I've been going through a difficult time in my soul. And I don't know what it is. I keep praying out to God. But our focus is elsewhere. We throw in these cursory prayers. Our mind is so distracted. And when we're distracted, naturally what comes into our life is a discouragement. And we see this happen for Solomon because he had it all. It was poured before him. You would think that, man, he was living the high life. He's like, yeah, God is blessing me and it's all good. You're all coming to interact with me and I'm pouring out the wisdom that God has placed in my life. But he was empty and lost. See, Solomon writes this book called Ecclesiastes in the Bible. And if you read the book of Ecclesiastes, it's not all that exciting and encouraging. In fact, this is what he says in Ecclesiastes 1 and 2. This is the words of the teacher, the son of David, Solomon, king in Jerusalem. This is who it is. I'm writing my hand down here. This is who I am. And he says this, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Oh, this guy was really charged up. I mean, if you want an inspirational speaker, you just bring in Solomon. Why was anyone coming to listen to this guy? I mean, hey, Solomon, I want to hear what you got to say. By the end of his life, when he's got all this fame, he's got all this accolades, he's got all this money, he's got all these people seeking his attention, he's sitting there going, this is a waste of my time. My life has been miserable. You're like, what? Come on, Solomon. If I had half of what you have, I'd be living the high life. That's what we think, right? We think that if I had all this stuff and my life was taken care of, boy, man, I would just be at peace. But there's no peace. Oh, I would be filled with such joy. But there's only discouragement. And we're like, what is going on? I thought this would answer my problems. But there's a reason why Solomon didn't ask God for these things. Because the blessings can't take our focus from the blesser. You know, it says again in Ecclesiastes 2, verses 10 and 11, it says this, Solomon talking again, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for all my labor. Yet, When I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Man, he's sitting near the end of his life and he's reflecting and saying, man, I should just sit back and look at all of the impact that I have made in the world. And he says, I got nothing that seems any value at all. What is it that we're living for? See, when we get to this state of depression, when we get this state of discouragement that comes when we've lost focus on what we should be focusing on, even the original gift no longer looks like a gift. See, because what was it that Solomon asked for? He asked for wisdom. So you can sit there and go, yeah, see, that's why I try to avoid money and women, or whatever. I try to avoid all that. No, he asked for wisdom. And listen to what it says in Ecclesiastes as well. It says, I devoted myself to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. Woo! Wow. God had given him the wisdom, and he's turned it into almost a curse. And he says, I will bless you with this. And he says, I've looked at it with wisdom, but this is a heavy burden God has laid on him. Is it a heavy burden? Or should his blessings lift us up? But we've lost focus. He says, I've seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. See, the problem was wisdom wasn't the goal either. It was just a blessing. Wisdom wasn't what Solomon should have been focusing on. It was already given to him. And he should have just functioned in that to lead the people of God that he had been commissioned to lead. See, we need to think about that. What blessings have been poured into your life that you're madly trying to hold on to? And you're like, I need to maintain these blessings, rather than allow the blessing to be manifested into a blessing for others. See, he said, I have to control this wisdom that God has given me. And it's lost its luster. See, even after we get distracted, though, here's the beautiful thing. Even after we've lost focus, and it happens over and over in all of our lives. I have been through many seasons where, man, I was in the high road, and I'm like, God, you are so good. And then all of a sudden I crash and burn, and I go through a season that I'm like, man, I seem so far away from you, Lord. When we're at that place, we shouldn't have to come to the end of our life. See, Solomon got to the place he was at the end of his life and reflecting on all of it and saying, wait a second, this all has been a waste. It all has been meaningless. Even after we get distracted, the beautiful thing is, on a beautiful God, a God of redemption, a God of restoration, a God that loves us dearly, is that we can refine focus. And so I'm here to tell you today that I want us to understand that as this ancestor of Jesus, that he had completely lost focus because of the blessings that God had poured into his life. Because God was doing so much good stuff in his life, which many of us, we can experience. We're like, man, if I were to really take an account of what God has done in my life, the list would be huge. But in the midst of huge blessings of God, we feel completely empty and lost and separated from a God who loves us. And I'm here to tell you, if that's where you're at, that God can refocus your life. He can restore that lost love that you had for him, that lost sense of purpose and direction, where Solomon was at a loss at the beginning saying, I don't know how to lead your people. I don't know how to be the right king. But God, I trust that you can do what you need to do in me. See, we can get back to that place that says, you know what, I have all this stuff, and this stuff doesn't matter. You can give it or you can take it. I don't really care. All I want is to be near you, God, and to be brought back into that reality, because that is where we need to be. See, it's almost like in our life, we go to the optometrist. And the optometrist, it was funny because I took my kids to the optometrist just recently. And my son's sitting in that thing, and, you know, it's a huge contraption. And they're like, what is going on? So he sits his chin in there. And then all of a sudden they start spinning it back and forth, in and out of focus. And at first he just jumped back. He's like, what just happened? And then he sits back in there and it goes in and out of focus. He's like, whoa. And he sees it. And sometimes that's our life, in and out of focus. But as quickly as it goes out of focus, it can get back in focus if we allow the doctor to do his work. But too often we live in a state of lack of focus. And we just go through life going, well, I kind of see what I'm supposed to see, but I don't really see. Ecclesiastes 12, verses 13 and 14. At the end of Ecclesiastes, he spends 11 and a half chapters talking about how miserable life is, and that's all that he's found out. But this is what he says at the end here. He says, now all has been heard. You're like, yeah, and I didn't want to listen to that. Why did I read that book? But it says, now that all has been heard, here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of people. This is all we're responsible for. And we're like, well, but wait a second, I gotta add to my 401k. I gotta get a bigger house. I gotta get a better job. What? Do we? Or have we lost focus? See, I get confused sometimes because we know that God says we're on this pursuit of him. We're on this journey to follow Jesus. That's all that Christianity is just being connected with Jesus, loving him and following him where he leads us. And we see that the United States of America has been declining in this pursuit of Jesus. People passionately following him for decades now. And we're like, wait a second, we know that this is where it is, and we've got this so locked in that we send out missionaries to foreign lands. In fact, we just sent out a mission team just a few weeks ago because we need to go share that. But we see now that some of the greatest work that God is doing is overseas. And people have now seen that the United States is an open mission field. And people from overseas are being sent here so that they can share the life of Jesus Christ. You're like, but wait a second. How does that work? Because we have too much stuff. Too much distraction. God has blessed us in an exorbitant way, and all of a sudden in the midst of the blessing, we become like Solomon, and we don't know how to use it, and we don't know what to do with it. And we're like, God, where am I? And where are you in the midst of this? Because we've become more about the blessings than the blesser. The whole duty of man, fear God. Not fear him like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid he's going to take away my toys. But to live in awe of who God is. To wake up and go, God, this is a new opportunity that I have today to experience you and your goodness once again. To lay our head on the pillow each night and think, man, I had so much fun playing with the toys you've given me. No, but to lay our head on the pillow and go, God, I was able to experience you and to share your grace and your love with anyone I came into contact with. And just be, I'm at peace. No matter what else comes my way. This is like getting our lives back in rhythm. The rhythm that we're supposed to have. I mean, there's something good and blessed that comes from that. That when we fear God, it's not something that controls us and limits us. People try to make it out like that if I'm going to fear God and follow his commands, that I got to limit myself and I got to shut things down. No, it opens us up. Because once again, he has not changed. He's still the same God that says, what is it that I can give you? And when we seek after him and says, I just need help in following your way, he says, I'm going to give you that and I'm going to give you more. Just because God has blessed you, don't lose focus on who he is, on what he wants to do. See, Jesus, many generations later from Solomon, Jesus affirmed this focus. He says, this is who God is. We miss the point on this God character because you try to say, I'm closer to God based on the stuff that I have. And when things are good, then I feel good about God. And we've twisted it around, but Jesus says this, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, doing the right thing. Seek first what God is fully about. Seek first doing the right thing for him. And he says, and all of these things will be given to you as well. It's almost like we're sitting in the same place as Solomon. Jesus knew this because he knew God intimately, but he also knew humanity intimately, and he knew the distractedness that we can face. Jesus had times, in fact, right here, when he says this in Matthew 6, he's preaching on a mountain, maybe the best sermon that's ever been preached. And he's sitting there and he's telling people this. He says, you're all here, and man, this is getting in my head because there's a whole bunch of people that want to hear what I have to say. When I go to the next town, you all follow, and I like the accolades. See, he was human and he liked the affirmation. But he says, I can't get caught up in that. We need to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added to you as well. Unfortunately, we like to seek all of these things. God, be with me as I go here. Be with me as I go here. Be with me and bless me as I go here. And we lose sight of his kingdom. We lose sight of his obedience. See, as we think this through, and I just have a question that I want us to answer is this. What in your life battles for your focus? What is it in your life? See, we all have those things. See, for Solomon, it became, it says the women led him astray. Once again, don't want to get all into that, but it was all of the stuff that people had laid before him. Sometimes it's the accolades that we've been given. We're like, ooh, I got some accolades from some people. Now I want some more of that. Or I got this raise and I got to work hard so that I can do this. Well, Scripture says for me to work hard as unto God, not for men, so I'm actually fulfilling that. But really, we're not doing it for God. We're doing it for ourselves. What is it in your life? I've said this before, and it can be so challenging for certain people. It doesn't have to be bad stuff. Too often we think that, the only things that distract us from God are the bad stuff. I keep away from, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. What about your family? Does your family sometimes steal your focus from being truly obedient to God? And you're like, well, I have to watch out for my family. God wants me to watch out for my family, right? I've heard that argument. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all this stuff will be added to you as well. You put other stuff before God, that's when you got problems. That's when you face issues. We're going to take a moment and pray. As a music team, they're going to sing a song and they're going to close us up. I just know that this is a battle for us in our world today, in our culture. And we can just sit there and go, well, I'll just continue to try to wrestle with this and go through this uneasiness of my soul. Rather than saying, no, refocus my life. I don't want to just pray and then just move on, or we can continue to struggle. As I pray and I get off the stage, just letting you know, I'm going to make my way over to our prayer area right over here. If any of you are in a position where you're like, man, I'm not where I need to be. I'm a little discouraged. My focus is not where it needs to be. I just ask you to be bold. Walk over and spend some time praying with me. I'm not going to try to convince you. They're not going to continue to expand the song until someone responds. Maybe no one does. But I do know it's a challenge. It's a challenge for me. It's a challenge for you. It was a challenge for Solomon. When all else has been said, here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God. Follow His commands. That's the full duty of humanity. Let's pray. God, I thank you. I thank you that we can come to a place where we realize that we have fallen short. But God, you love us enough to bring us restoration, to bring us back where we need to be. God, I pray that you will bring us back, that our hearts will once again fall deeply in love with you, not with the stuff, not with the distraction, but with you that's poured everything out for our lives. We love you, God. God, I pray for anyone in here today that has not truly given themselves wholly and completely to you. I pray that today they release all of the other stuff and say, you are God. You're the one that I live for.